Thank you for joining us at Prime Wisdom Hub, where every story is crafted to inspire and enlighten. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel. Let's begin today's story. Hello and welcome. We live in a world of constant noise, a world of notifications, deadlines, and the endless curated perfection of lives lived online. But beneath the noise, there are simpler, older truths. Tonight, we're going to explore the paths we walk, the burdens we carry, and the opportunities we so often miss. Let's begin. Story 1: The Consultant and the Barista. Our first story is about two men who saw each other nearly every day but never truly saw the truth. Mark was a senior managing consultant. From his corner office on the 45th floor, he saw the city as a grid of data. He worked 80 hours a week, and his life was a blur of spreadsheets and high-stakes Zoom calls. Every morning, he stopped at a small independent coffee shop called The Daily Grind. Behind the counter was Leo. Leo seemed to have the perfect life. He wore flannel shirts, he knew every customer's name, he made beautiful latte art, and at 3 p.m. he flipped the closed sign and was free. One Monday, Mark was crushed by a deadline. As Leo handed him his coffee, Mark sighed. "Leo, you've got it made. No corporate nonsense, you're your own boss. You're done by 3, you're living the dream." Leo paused, wiping down the counter. He gave Mark a tired, knowing smile. "Mark," he said, "it's funny. You see me making coffee, but you don't see me waking up at 4 a.m. to get to the wholesale market. You don't see me staying up until midnight trying to figure out payroll, wondering how I'll cover rent, which just went up 20%. He gestured to the shiny espresso machine. "This freedom? This machine is on a loan I can't afford. I haven't taken a real vacation in 5 years. Honestly, Mark, I see you walk in here. Your suit, your stability, you get a paycheck even if you get sick. In my eyes, you're the one living the dream." Mark looked at his coffee, then at Leo. For the first time, he saw the exhaustion behind the barista's smile. And so we have our first lesson. In life, we have a dangerous habit of comparing our behind the scenes with everyone else's highlight reel. Mark saw Leo's freedom but not his anxiety. Leo saw Mark's stability but not his burnout. True contentment doesn't come from wishing for another person's life. It comes from finding the gratitude in your own. This attachment to what we think we see or what we've already invested leads us to our second story. Story 2: The Founder's Pivot. This story is called The Sunk Cost. There was once a startup founder in Silicon Valley named Sarah. She had a bale of cotton, a social media app she had been carrying for 2 years. She had poured all her money and her team's energy into it. One day, on the verge of bankruptcy, her lead engineer discovered something by accident. "Sarah," he said, "while building the app, we created a new compression algorithm. It's not flashy, but it's 50% faster than anything on the market. This is a bale of gold." He urged her to change direction, to pivot, but Sarah refused. "We have come too far," she said. "We can't just throw away 2 years of work. This app is my vision." She stubbornly continued carrying the bale of cotton. A year later, her company was worthless. Her co-founder, the engineer, took the bale of gold algorithm, started a new company, and sold it for $100 million. Sarah's story is a modern lesson on the sunk cost fallacy. She wasn't holding on to a dream. She was being dragged down by the weight of her past effort. We often do this. We stay in the wrong job, the wrong relationship, or hold on to the wrong idea, not because it has a future, but because we've already spent so much time on it. The lesson: do not be afraid to put down the heavy burden that no longer serves you. True strength isn't just about endurance. It's about the wisdom to know when to let go and pick up the opportunity you've been ignoring. Story 3. The obstacle in the lobby. But what about the obstacles we don't choose? The ones that are placed right in our path. At a large tech firm, the CEO wanted to test the company's culture. She had a broken vending machine placed directly in the middle of the main lobby, right in front of the elevators. It was an enormous inconvenience. The senior executives walked around it, annoyed. They sent angry emails to the facilities department. The star coders took pictures and posted them on the company's internal Slack channel, complaining about management. Everyone saw the problem, but no one did anything about it. Then Maria, a new intern on her second week, arrived. She saw the machine. She saw the bottleneck of people trying to get around it. She put down her bag, went to the security desk and asked, "Who do I call to help me move this?" She found the building's maintenance supervisor, and together they pushed the heavy machine back against the wall, clearing the path. When they moved it, they found a small plaque bolted to the floor where the machine had been. It read, "To the person who solved this, email the CEO for your reward." That day, the CEO sent a company-wide email. It included the security footage of Maria moving the machine and a photo of all the executives complaining on Slack. The lesson was clear. Every obstacle we face is an opportunity to improve our situation. While many are content to complain about the problem, those who succeed are those who are willing to take action. Don't just be the person who spots the problem. Be the person who solves it. Solving a problem that's right in front of you is one thing. But what about the problems that hide? The ones that require patience. This leads to a lesson from the world of creation. Story 4. The coder's patience. There were once two software companies racing to build a revolutionary new app. Call it the Elixir. Both teams were brilliant. Both worked day and night, gathering all the right ingredients. Finally, after a year of work, they both reached the finish line. The first team, Team Agile, was running their final tests when they found a small, tiny bug. It seemed harmless. Their investors were pressuring them to launch. "What difference can one tiny bug make?" the team lead said. They launched the app. The bug, however, wasn't harmless. It corrupted 10% of their new user data. The app was a disaster. Their elixir was nothing but bitter, foul-smelling water. The second team, Team Vanguard, found the exact same bug. Their investors were also screaming. The pressure was immense. But the team lead, seeing the flaw, held the line. "Not yet," she said. Her team argued, but she clenched her teeth and held back. They waited. They delayed the launch by one more day. Just one. They found the bug, fixed it, and launched at the dawn of the third day. Their launch was flawless. Their app was the cool, life-giving elixir everyone had hoped for. The difference between failure and success is often not talent or hard work. Both teams had that. The difference, as the original story tells us, lies in endurance and patience. It is the courage to wait for that one final moment, even when the world is screaming at you to hurry. It is the wisdom to know that the last 1% is the most important part of the journey. This idea of waiting, of delayed reward, brings us to the nature of gratitude. Story 5. The $10,000 check. Marcus was a brilliant student from a poor neighborhood, but he was about to drop out of college. He couldn't afford his final year. One day, a wealthy investor, Mr. Harrison, gave a speech at the school. Marcus asked a question so insightful that Harrison was stunned. After the speech, Harrison found Marcus. "What's your story?" he asked. Marcus explained his situation. Harrison listened, then did something unexpected. He took out his checkbook and wrote a check for $10,000, enough to cover Marcus's final year. "I don't want this back," Harrison said. "I just want you to promise me that one day you'll pay it forward when you have the chance." Years went by. Marcus graduated and became a financial strategist, building his own quiet success. One day he read the news. Harrison's massive investment firm was the target of a hostile takeover. It was being dismantled by rivals, and Harrison was about to lose everything. Marcus saw his chance. Using his unique skill, he spent a week analyzing the market and found a flaw in the attacker's strategy. He anonymously organized a group of smaller shareholders, fought back, and saved Harrison's company from collapse. When Harrison finally discovered who his savior was, he called Marcus. "You. Why would you do this?" Marcus simply replied, "I was just paying it forward, just as I promised." The original story teaches us to be grateful to those who have helped you, to double the goodness in this life. The good you put into the world is an investment. You may not see the returns for years, but the kindness you show, the help you offer, may just be the very thing that returns to save you when you least expect it. But what happens when we think we no longer need help? What happens when we believe our knowledge is full? Story 6. The Harvard degree and the mechanic Alex, a recent Harvard MBA graduate, was hired to optimize a manufacturing plant. He arrived with a briefcase full of spreadsheets, convinced he knew everything the master knew. He walked the factory floor and saw Sal, the old mechanic, doing things in a way that seemed inefficient. Alex spent a week building a new simulation, a perfect model. He was proud. He had filled his bowl to the top. "My way is 15% faster," he announced in a meeting. Sal, the mechanic, listened patiently. When Alex was done, Sal asked, "A quick question. In your simulation, did you account for the humidity?" Alex paused. "What?" "The humidity," Sal repeated. "On rainy days, that old bee machine shudders. If you push it 15% faster, you'll snap the main belt, your full bowl of stones. It didn't leave room for the sand." Alex was stunned. Sal smiled gently. "And you definitely didn't leave room for the water. The water is knowing that the machine needs a rest on Fridays or it won't start on Monday." Alex looked at his perfect spreadsheet, suddenly realizing it was worthless. The student in the original story, like Alex, was embarrassed and lowered his head. He had mistaken knowledge for wisdom. Knowledge is like the stones. It's the facts, the theories, the data, but wisdom is the sand and the water. It's the experience, the context, the humility to know that the bowl is never full. The most dangerous thing you can believe is that you have nothing left to learn. We've learned that a mind that believes it is full is in fact empty of wisdom. But it's not just our minds we overfill. We do it to our calendars. We treat busyness as a badge of honor, a sign of importance. We become human doings instead of human beings. Which brings us to the story of David. Story 7, the busy executive David was the CEO of a successful firm. His mantra, his identity was, "I'm swamped." He said it to his wife when she asked about dinner. "Can't, I'm swamped." He said it to his friends when they invited him to the game. "Love to, but I'm just buried." One Saturday, he was at his daughter's soccer championship. He was there physically, but he wasn't present. He stood on the sidelines, his eyes glued to his phone, closing a deal. Dad, did you see it?" his daughter shouted, running over, her face bright with sweat and pride. "I made the winning goal." "That's great, honey, incredible," David said, his thumb still scrolling. "Listen, I have to take this call." He saw her face fall, but the call was urgent. 2 days later, during a tense board meeting, the urgency finally caught up. A sharp pain shot up his arm. The room blurred. David woke up in a hospital room. It was stark white and completely jarringly silent. His wife was asleep in the chair next to him, her face strained with worry. His urgent phone was on the bedside table, buzzing angrily on vibrate. His doctor walked in. "Well, David," he said, "you're lucky. It was a mild heart attack. It's not a death sentence. It's a warning shot. Your body is telling you unequivocally to stop." David looked at the buzzing phone. An email preview read, "Urgent, Q3 projections." He looked at his wife's sleeping face. He looked back at the phone, and for the first time in his life, he felt absolutely nothing for the screen. He reached over, picked it up, and turned it off. In the silence of that hospital room, David realized the profound, terrifying truth. He had spent his entire life working to build a future, and in the process, he was destroying his present. He was so busy making a living that he had completely forgotten to make a life. The emails, he realized, would never, ever stop. But his daughter's childhood would. He had traded a priceless moment for an urgent call, and he nearly paid for that trade with everything he had. Story 8. The Loud and the Quiet Salesman. David's problem was a flaw in his personal character. Our next story is about a flaw in professional character. At a large car dealership, there were 2 top salesmen. The first was Rick. Rick was all noise. He was charisma. He used fast talk, flashy discounts, and high-pressure tactics. He could sell ice to an Eskimo, and he hit his quota every single month. The second salesman was Arthur. Arthur was quiet. He didn't sell. He listened. He'd ask a family, "So, what kind of driving do you really do? Tell me about your week." He'd spend an hour talking about safety features and fuel economy. Sometimes the customers would leave without buying. Rick would laugh at him. "You lost him, Arthur." At the end of the year, the owner called an assembly. "Our salesman of the year," he announced, "is Arthur." Rick was stunned. "How? My numbers are just as good as his." The owner smiled. "Rick, you hit your quota. You sold 100 cars to 100 different people, but Arthur, he sold 100 cars to about 60 families because the people he sold to came back. They brought their friends. They brought their kids when it was time for their first car. You build transactions. Arthur builds relationships." In our fast-paced world, we are often impressed by noise, by flash, by the quick win. But the story of Rick and Arthur teaches us a vital lesson. Transactions are temporary, but relationships are sustainable. Trust, built quietly and patiently, will always be more valuable than charisma. Substance will always, in the end, outsell style. Story 9. The Lottery Winner. Arthur found his success in relationships. Our next story is about a man who got his success from pure random luck and found it was worthless. Frank was a factory worker. His life was simple. He worked his shift, he bowled on Thursdays, and he saw his family on Sundays. He was content. Then one Tuesday, he won the Powerball. $150 million. He did exactly what you'd expect. He quit his job immediately. He bought a mansion, a fleet of sports cars, and took extravagant vacations. He bought a new set of friends. He bought a new life. 6 months later, a reporter came to interview him in his giant marble-floored mansion. The reporter expected to find the happiest man in the world. Instead, he found Frank sitting alone in a vast empty room staring at a giant TV that wasn't even on. "Are you happy?" the reporter asked. Frank was silent for a long time. "I thought this was the goal," Frank said, his voice hollow. "I thought this was winning. But I miss bowling on Thursdays. I miss the guys at the plant. I miss having somewhere to be in the morning." He looked around the empty room. "I have everything, and I have absolutely nothing." Frank's story is a painful one, but a necessary one. We spend our lives chasing the idea of wealth, the idea of freedom. We think that enough money will solve all our problems. But Frank learned the hard way. Money can buy you comfort. It can buy you options, but it cannot buy you a purpose. A life without a why, a reason to get up, a community to belong to, a problem to solve, isn't a life of freedom. It's just a more comfortable prison. We've just seen how a man like Frank, the lottery winner, could have everything and yet feel hollow because he had lost his purpose. But a lack of purpose is not the only thing that destroys us. Sometimes it is an excess of pride. This brings us to a story about a man who was, in his own mind, a god. Story 10. The Hollywood Director and the Flaw. Arthur Vance was a celebrated film director, a genius according to the critics. He was in the final editing session for The Crimson Sky, his masterpiece. He sat in the dark, surrounded by his editors and producers, a team of yes men who saw him as infallible. They watched the final cut. The lights came up. "It's perfect, Arthur," they all said. "Flawless." "Wait," a quiet voice said from the back. It was Emily, a new studio intern, barely 22 years old. The room went cold. Arthur Vance turned his head. "Mr. Vance," she said, her voice shaking, It's brilliant, but I think I found a small flaw." "A flaw," Arthur said, his voice dangerously soft. "In the second act," Emily continued, "he reads the letter on Tuesday. But in the timeline, he doesn't receive the letter until Wednesday. It's just a small continuity error." Silence. Arthur Vance's reputation was built on his perfection. He couldn't accept a flaw, especially not from an intern. He didn't check the script, he didn't ask where, he just sneered. "There is no flaw," he said. "My technique is perfect. You're mistaken. Get her out of my edit bay." The film was released, and the critics? They didn't just find the flaw, they seized it. It became a meme. It was the one loose thread that unraveled the entire film. Arthur Vance, the genius, was undone. The original story tells of a genius who built perfect clones of himself to trick Death. But Death, being wise, knew the genius's weakness. Death said, "Your work is nearly perfect, but I found one tiny flaw." The real genius, unable to stand the criticism, leaped out and yelled, "Mona, where?" and was captured. Arthur Vance, like that genius, wasn't defeated by the flaw itself. He was defeated by his ego. His need to be seen as perfect was the real trap. The lesson is simple but difficult. Ego is the enemy. It is the one flaw that makes all other flaws fatal. Part 2. The lens of the mind. We've spent our time in the world of ambition and success. Now we turn inward. We turn to the lens through which we see everything, our attitude, our perception. We often believe the world happens to us, but the truth is, we create the world we see. This brings us to a simple story about traffic. Story 11. The driver in the Sunset Ben was driving home on the 405 freeway in Los Angeles. He was in a total gridlock. He was angry. His entire world had shrunk to the one thing frustrating him, the red taillights of the Toyota Camry in front of him. This was his white dot. He laid on his horn. He cursed. He felt his blood pressure rise. His entire reality was this one single point of frustration. Just then his wife called. "Ben," she said, "are you seeing this?" "Am I seeing what?" he snapped. "This idiot in front of me who won't move?" "No," she said, her voice soft. "The sky. Look to your left." Ben turned his head from the white dot, and he finally saw it. The blackboard. The entire sky over the Pacific Ocean was a breathtaking explosion of purple, orange, and gold. It was the most beautiful sunset of the year. He had been so focused on the one small flaw in his day that he had missed the universe of beauty surrounding him. The professor in the original story asked his students, "Did none of you see the large blackboard behind the dot?" We are all guilty of this. We let a single bad email, a single rude comment, a single moment of traffic, a tiny white dot, become our entire reality. We forget that behind every small annoyance is a vast, beautiful blackboard of life. We must train our eyes to see the picture, not just the flaw. Story 12. The Two Patients. Ben's problem was one of focus. This next story is about the power of attitude. There were two men, both seriously ill, in the same hospital room. One man's bed was next to the room's only window. The other man's bed was next to the wall. The man by the window, as he recovered, would spend hours describing what he saw outside. He described a beautiful park, a lake with ducks and swans, children laughing and playing, young lovers walking hand in hand. The man by the wall lived for these descriptions. They became his entire world. But as time went on, his gratitude turned to envy. Why him? He thought. Why does he get to see all that life while I only see a blank wall? The envy festered into resentment. One night, the man by the window began coughing violently. He was choking. He fumbled for the button to call the nurse but couldn't reach it. The man by the wall watched. He didn't move. He didn't press his button. He just watched. The next morning, the man by the window was pronounced dead. The man by the wall immediately asked to be moved to the window bed. Eagerly, he pulled himself up on one elbow to finally see the wonderful park for himself. He looked out the window and saw nothing but a blank brick wall. His roommate had invented it all. He had created the park, the lake, and the children just to bring joy to the man who would eventually let him die. The original story teaches us that life is beautiful or ugly depending on the perception of each of us. The first man in his suffering chose to create beauty and share it. The second man in his envy destroyed the very source of his own joy. Your reality is not what you see. Your reality is what you choose to see. And that choice defines who you are. We've just seen how a man's attitude could literally create a world of beauty from a blank brick wall, while another's envy could destroy his own joy. This teaches us that our perception creates our reality. But what about our value? What happens to our worth when the world or life itself seems to crush us? This brings us to one of the most powerful simple lessons. Story 13. The $20 bill. A well-known motivational speaker stepped onto a stage in front of 1,000 people. She held up a crisp new $20 bill. "Who wants this $20 bill?" she asked. Hands shot up across the entire auditorium. "I am going to give this to one of you," she said. "But first, I'm going to do this." She proceeded to crush the money in her fist, wrinkling it into a tight, crumpled ball. She held it up again. "Who still wants it?" Every hand stayed in the air. "Well," she said, "what if I do this?" She dropped the bill onto the stage, ground it into the floor with her heel, and then picked up the now dirty, mangled, and pathetic-looking piece of money. "How about now? Who wants it now?" Not a single hand went down. She finally smiled. "My friends, you have all just learned a lesson. It doesn't matter what I did to this money. You still wanted it because its value did not decrease. It is still worth $20. The original story asks, have you realized this valuable lesson? So many times in our lives we are dropped, crumpled, and ground into the dirt by the decisions we make and the circumstances that befall us. We feel worthless. But just like that $20 bill, no matter what has happened to you, no matter how dirty or beaten down you feel, you have not lost your value. The scrapes, the wrinkles, the dirt, they don't change what you are worth. You are still and always will be priceless. Story 14. The husband who thought his wife was deaf. We've just learned not to devalue ourselves, but it is just as easy to falsely devalue others, to find a flaw in them when the flaw truly lies with us. This is the story of a man named Jim. Jim was watching football in the living room and became convinced his wife, who was in the kitchen, was losing her hearing. He decided to test his theory. He stood at the living room doorway about 40 feet away, 12 meters, and said in a normal voice, "Honey, what's for dinner?" No answer. He walked to the end of the hall about 30 feet away, 9 meters. "Honey, what's for dinner?" Still no answer. He walked to the kitchen doorway about 20 feet away, 6 meters. "Honey, what's for dinner?" Nothing. He was now deeply concerned. He walked right up behind her, just 3 feet away, 3 meters. "Honey, what's for dinner?" She turned around, her face full of frustration, and said loudly, "Jim, for the 4th time, we are having chicken." The original story observes, when a person stumbles on a stone, his first reaction is to blame the stone. Jim was so certain the problem was his wife that he never once considered the problem might be himself. We are brilliant at spotting the flaws in others, but blind to our own. The ancient lesson holds. We are quick to judge others by their actions, but ourselves by our intentions. Before you set out to fix the flaw in someone else, first have the courage to ask, is the flaw in me? Story 15. The man who punched the wall. This flaw is often simple forgetfulness, but sometimes it's something far more destructive: anger. There was a man named Kevin who had a terrible, explosive temper. His wife often told him, "Your anger is going to be the end of you." One day, Kevin's boss embarrassed him in a meeting. Kevin sat there fuming but said nothing. He wanted to scream, but he held it in. He got in his car, drove home, and seethed in silence. He walked into his house, and the first thing he saw was a pair of his son's shoes left in the middle of the hallway. It was the final straw. He didn't yell at his boss. He didn't confront the source of his rage. Instead, he let out a roar and punched the hallway wall with all his might. He missed the stud. His hand went straight through the drywall. He heard a sickening snap. He spent the next 6 hours in the emergency room with his wife. He had broken 2 bones in his hand. His boss was at home, sleeping soundly, completely unaware. The original story teaches us that hot-tempered people often have few collaborators. No one likes to work with people like that. Kevin's story teaches us something more personal. Uncontrolled anger, misdirected rage will always punish you far more than it punishes the person you are angry with. Your anger doesn't hurt them, it poisons you, it breaks your own hand in your own house. We've just seen how destructive anger can be, how it poisons the person who holds it. But there are poisons more subtle than anger. We live in an age of performance. We have become experts at building beautiful digital walls to hide our true and often broken selves. This brings us to the story of a woman known only as Wanderlust Chloe. Story 16. The Influencer. To her 2 million followers, Chloe's life was perfect. Her Instagram feed was a flawless mosaic of turquoise oceans, Parisian breakfasts, and designer outfits in exotic locations. Every photo was a masterpiece of effortless beauty. Her captions spoke of authenticity, gratitude, and living your best life. But the Wanderlust Chloe in the photos was a character. The real Chloe was sitting in a cluttered gray apartment in Los Angeles. She wasn't at a Parisian cafe. She was eating instant noodles over her sink. The effortless photo in Greece? It had taken 400 attempts, a screaming match with the photographer, and hours of editing to remove the crowds and her own look of exhaustion. She was not wanderlust. She was just lost. The designer clothes were all rented. The exotic hotels were comped, free, in exchange for posts. But she was too busy creating content to ever enjoy them. She was buried in credit card debt to maintain the appearance of the life her followers loved. She scrolled through her own comments. "You're perfect. I wish I was you." Goals. She was the loneliest person in a room full of 2 million people, a prisoner of the perfect life she had fabricated. This is a modern parable about the danger of appearances. We, like Chloe's followers, spend hours envying lives that do not actually exist. We compare our messy, complicated reality to a carefully edited, perfectly curated fantasy. The lesson is a warning. Do not trade your authentic happiness for the mere appearance of happiness. A life lived for the approval of others is not a life. It is a performance, and it is the most exhausting performance in the world. Story 17. The Ferrari dream. Chloe was trapped by the perfect life she showed others. Our next story is about a man who was trapped by the perfect life he had imagined for himself. When he was 8 years old, a young boy named Tom told his parents exactly what his life would be. "I will be a marine biologist," he declared. "I'll marry a tall woman with blonde hair. We will live in a glass house on the beach. We will have 2 sons, and I will drive a red Ferrari." This was his dream. 40 years later, Tom was a different man. He had become a high school science teacher. He had married his college sweetheart, a short, funny woman with dark hair who couldn't sing but was a wonderful artist. They lived in a comfortable house in a quiet suburb. They had 3 wonderful, chaotic daughters. And he drove a safe, reliable, slightly dented Honda minivan. One morning, while stuck in traffic, a red Ferrari convertible pulled up next to him. The driver was a young man, alone. Tom looked at the car. He looked at the child seats in his own back seat. He looked at the crayon drawing his youngest daughter had taped to his dashboard. For a moment, he felt a pang of sadness for the boy whose dream didn't come true. But then his phone buzzed. It was a text from his wife, a funny picture of their dog sleeping. He laughed out loud. He realized his life, the noisy house, the teaching job, the minivan, the love, was infinitely deeper and more real than the shallow, glossy dream of his childhood. He had become something better than a marine biologist in a Ferrari. He had become happy. The original story tells us, actually, each of us has joy, and that is the present. We spend so much time chasing the life we planned that we fail to enjoy the life we have. Tom's lesson is one of profound wisdom. Sometimes the greatest blessing in life is not getting what you thought you wanted. Story 18. The Eagle Among the Chickens. Tom learned to see the value in his own unexpected life. But what if your life is limited not by your dreams but by the expectations of others? There's an old Native American story that goes like this. A man found an eagle's egg and put it in the nest of a prairie chicken. The eaglet hatched and grew up with the brood of chickens. He did whatever the chickens did. He clucked and cackled. He scratched the dirt for seeds and insects. He would fly, but only in a brief, frantic flutter of wings for a few feet. He believed with all his heart that he was nothing more than a chicken. One day he looked up at the sky and saw a magnificent bird soaring on the great wind currents, its wings barely moving. "What is that?" the eagle asked his chicken brothers. "That is the eagle," one chicken replied. "He is the king of all birds, but don't worry about him. You could never be like him. You are a chicken." The eagle looked back down at the dirt. He believed the chicken. He continued to live his life as a chicken. And when he died thinking he was a chicken, never once knowing the power, the majesty, or the boundless sky that was his true birthright. The original story is a tragedy. The eagle's greatest shortcoming was his lack of passion to discover himself. The world around you may try to tell you who you are. Your family, your friends, your colleagues, like the chickens, may try to keep you scratching in the dirt because that is all they know. The lesson is this: do not let the small minds of others define the limits of your sky. You were born with a destiny. Look up, find out who you truly are, and fly. We've just been warned not to let others define us, to fly like the eagle we were born to be. But it's not just others who trap us, we trap ourselves. We trap ourselves with a single dangerous word: someday. Story 19. The Someday China. When her mother passed away, a woman named Karen began the sad, quiet work of sorting through her belongings. Her mother had always lived a life of careful thrift. She never indulged. She saved everything for a special occasion. In the back of a closet, Karen found a beautiful silk dress, still in its original box with the tissue paper. She had never seen her mother wear it. In the dining room hutch, she found a set of exquisite china, hand-painted and edged with gold. Karen remembered this china. It was her grandmother's, brought out only to be looked at, never to be used. Tucked in a drawer, she found a bottle of expensive French perfume, still sealed. Karen sat on the floor, holding the dusty bottle. She remembered all the family dinners served on everyday plates, all the birthdays celebrated in simple clothes, all the moments her mother had waited for an occasion special enough for her good things. The special occasion never came. Karen stood up. She unwrapped the silk dress. She set the table with the gold-rimmed china, and she sprayed the expensive perfume into the empty, quiet air. We are all guilty of this. We save our best selves, our best ideas, our best things for a perfect moment we call someday. We tell ourselves we'll start that project someday, we'll take that trip someday, we'll finally use the good china someday. But the original story of the eagle and the story of this mother teach us the same lesson. Time runs out. The tragedy is dying with your special occasion things still in the box. The lesson is this: today is the special occasion, the only one you are guaranteed. Use the good china, wear the new dress, live the life you are saving for someday. Today. Story 20. The professor's question. This idea of today brings us to a philosophy professor who wanted to teach his students this very lesson. On the last day of the semester, he walked into his lecture hall. "Before we finish," he said, "I have one final question. If you knew with absolute certainty that you had only 24 hours left to live, what would you do?" A buzz filled the room. Students started writing. One student wrote, "I'd fly to Paris, I'd eat at the best restaurant, I'd tell the person I love that I love them." Another wrote, "I'd go to the beach, I'd watch the sunset, I'd make peace with my family." Another wrote, "I'd spend every second with my dog, I'd eat my favorite meal, I'd write letters to my friends." The professor collected the answers and read a few aloud. Then he looked at the class. "These are all wonderful," he said. "But my real question is this: why aren't you doing any of those things now?" The wise man in the original story was asked what he would do on his last day. He replied, "I would do the same things I do every day: make tea, pull weeds, take a nap." Why? Because he was already living a life he valued. The students' answers revealed a terrible truth. They were all living lives they would not choose if their time was short. The lesson is a wake-up call. Don't wait for a deadline to start living the life you want. The tragedy is not that life is short. It's that we wait so long to begin it. Part 3. The human connection. We've talked about work and about the mind. But what about the most important part of our lives? What about each other? Our relationships define us, but they are also our greatest challenge. Story 21. The Oak and the Willow. A young couple, Michael and Sarah, were deeply in love, but they fought constantly. Michael was proud, rigid, and logical. He was like an oak tree, strong, unbending, and certain he was right. Sarah was passionate, emotional, and adaptable. She was like a willow tree. One night, a terrible storm of an argument blew in. Money, stress, the future. "You are not being logical," Michael said, standing firm like the oak. "The facts are the facts. You must see it my way." "I don't feel that way," Sarah cried, bending like the willow. "It's not about the facts, it's about how it makes us feel." Michael refused to bend. "This is not a feeling. This is reality. Bend to reality, Sarah." "If you won't bend, Michael," she said, her voice breaking, "you will break." He refused. The storm raged, and the relationship, like an oak in a hurricane, snapped. It broke. Michael was left standing alone, right, but completely broken. Sarah the willow wept, but she survived. She bent, and she endured. The original story compares this to a tile and a piece of cotton. The hard tile, when dropped, shatters. The soft cotton lands gently. Michael was the tile. He was so focused on being right that he forgot to be kind. In our relationships, it is not our rigidity that makes us strong. It is our softness. It is our ability to be like cotton or the willow, to absorb, to adapt, and to be gentle. In love, being right is never as important as being together. We've just seen how, in a relationship, stubborn pride, being the oak tree, leads to breaking, and softness, being the willow, leads to endurance. But this love, this connection, is deeper than just romantic partners. It lives in a part of us that memory cannot touch. Story 22, the father with Alzheimer's. Ben's father, Frank, was disappearing. Alzheimer's had taken him piece by piece, first his keys, then his stories, then finally his son. Frank no longer knew who Ben was, but Ben still visited the care home every Sunday. One afternoon, he took Frank to a small diner, a place his father had always loved. Frank was in a good mood. He didn't know Ben was his son, but he knew Ben was a kind young man. They sat in a booth sharing a piece of apple pie. As they were getting ready to leave, Ben noticed his father looking at the small complimentary cookie that came with the check. Slowly, Frank picked up the cookie. He didn't eat it. He carefully wrapped it in a napkin and, with a look of quiet determination, slipped it into his coat pocket. Ben smiled, confused. "Dad, what are you doing? If you want another cookie, I can just buy you a box." Frank looked up at him, his eyes distant and clouded with the disease. He seemed to have forgotten the question. But then he leaned in, as if sharing a secret. "This one," he whispered, patting his pocket. "This one is for my son. He loves these." Ben's heart stopped. He couldn't speak. He just sat there looking at a man who no longer knew him, but had never for 1 second stopped loving him. The original story tells us even though the old father had forgotten himself, the love he had for his child had never cooled. Ben learned that day that love is not a memory. It is not a fact that can be forgotten. It is an instinct. It is a fundamental part of who we are. The mind may fade, but the heart holds on to what is true. Cherish your parents. Love them while they are here, even and especially when they no longer remember why. Story 23. The balloons. This love, this connection to others is not just a comfort. It is, in fact, the answer. There was a speaker at a large corporate seminar. He stopped his presentation and said, "I want to try an activity." He gave each of the 50 people in the room a balloon and a marker. "Write your name on your balloon," he said. They collected all 50 balloons and put them in an empty room next door. "You have 5 minutes," the speaker announced, "to go into that room and find the balloon with your name on it." The 50 people rushed in. It was chaos. They were pushing, shoving, grabbing balloons and tossing them. It was a frantic, anxious mess. After 5 minutes, no one, not a single person, had found their own balloon. "Stop," the speaker said. "Now I want you to go in, pick up any balloon, find the person whose name is on it, and hand it to them." The room changed. People were calm. They were cooperating. They were smiling. In less than 3 minutes, every single person was holding the balloon with their name on it. The speaker stepped forward and said, This is what happens in our lives." We are all frantically, desperately searching for our own happiness, pushing everyone else out of the way, and we can't find it. But the truth, as you just proved, is simple. Your happiness lies in the happiness of other people. Help them find their happiness, and you will in turn find your own. Story 24, The Neighbor's Lawn. But this search for happiness, this desire for what we don't have, can lead us down a path of envy. There was a man named Gary who was obsessed with his lawn. He watered, he weeded, he fertilized. But it was never enough. Because his neighbor Tim, had the perfect lawn. It was a deep, lush, impossible shade of green. It was perfect. Gary was consumed by it. He spent thousands of dollars, he hired expensive landscapers, he bought exotic seeds, he tested his soil. But no matter what he did, his lawn always had a brown patch, a few weeds. Tim's lawn remained flawless. It drove Gary crazy, it ruined his weekends. Finally, one winter day after a heavy snow, Gary looked outside. The snow on his lawn was melting, revealing the dormant brown grass beneath. But on Tim's lawn, the snow was melting to reveal the same perfect, lush, impossible green. Gary finally understood. He walked over, knocked on Tim's door, and said, "I have to know. How do you do it?" Tim laughed. "Oh, that? It's AstroTurf. It's fake. I got tired of mowing." Gary had spent years of his life, thousands of his dollars, and all of his peace of mind, trying to compete with an illusion. The original story warns us, we tend to admire the happiness of others, forgetting that our own lives are the dream of someone else. The perfection we see in others on social media, in their careers, or even just on their front lawn is so often not what it seems. Stop comparing your messy, authentic reality to someone else's perfectly curated and often artificial illusion. We've just seen how Gary, the homeowner, wasted his life comparing his real lawn to an artificial one. He was disconnected from reality, but in our modern world, we have found new and more powerful ways to disconnect. Not just from our neighbors, but from the people we love the most. Story 25, The Phones at the Table. It was a scene you could see in any restaurant on any night, in any city in America. A family of 4, a mother, a father, a teenage son, and a younger daughter were out for dinner. It was the daughter's birthday. The food arrived, and one by one the screens came out. The father was scrolling through urgent work emails. The mother was on Facebook looking at another family's vacation photos. The son was on TikTok, a silent, flickering light show reflecting in his glasses. Only the daughter was looking up. She watched her family, who were all there but not with her. She wanted to tell them about her day. She wanted to talk about the tryouts for the school play. She wanted to laugh. But she was invisible, sitting at a table with 3 ghosts. Finally, quietly, she pulled out her own phone and began texting a friend, "Happy birthday to me." They ate their entire meal in near total silence, bathed in the cold blue light of their own separate worlds. They were together, but they were completely, utterly alone. This story is a quiet tragedy. There is no villain, only a habit. We have become so connected to the entire world in our pocket that we have disconnected from the people sitting right across from us. We have confused presence with presence. We think that just by being there, we are showing love. But the gift our loved ones truly crave is not our physical presence. It is our full, undivided attention. Put the phone away. Your emails can wait. Your feed will still be there, but the moments with your family, they are disappearing one notification at a time. Story 26, The Two Hikers. This failure to connect, this focus on ourselves, can be a minor tragedy at a dinner table. In the wilderness, it can be fatal. Two friends, Chris and Sam, were on a difficult multi-day hike. Chris was an experienced hiker, fast and strong. Sam was less experienced and carried a heavier pack. On the second day, on a steep incline, Sam began to struggle. He was exhausted. "Chris," he panted, "please, man, can you take just a little of my weight just for this next mile?" Chris didn't even slow down. "Sorry, Sam. Every man for himself out here. You packed it, you carry it, we've got to make time." He pushed on, leaving Sam farther and farther behind. Chris reached the summit, proud of his time. He waited and waited. Sam never arrived. Finally, Chris hiked back down. He found Sam miles back, collapsed by the trail, his leg badly broken. He had slipped under the weight of his own pack. Chris now had to carry all of Sam's gear and half carry Sam himself on a brutal 2-day journey back to the car. The mule in the original story, selfish and arrogant, said, "Why should I help you?" But when the donkey died, the mule was forced to carry the donkey's entire burden and the donkey's hide. Chris learned the same lesson. His selfishness didn't make his journey faster, it made it infinitely harder. The lesson is a fundamental truth of community. We are, in the end, all on the same trail. You can act like you're alone, or you can share the burden. But when your partner falls, their burden becomes yours, whether you like it or not. Share the weight. It's not just kindness, it's survival. Story 27. The grumpy neighbor. Chris learned the hard way that he needed to connect. Our next story is about a man who had forgotten how to connect. Mr. Henderson was the grumpy old man of the neighborhood. His lawn was immaculate, and he would yell at any child who even looked like they might step on it. He was a man who lived behind a wall of his own making. He was, in a word, lonely. One afternoon, a new kid in the neighborhood, a 10-year-old boy named Alex, was riding his bike. His chain slipped off. He sat on the curb, frustrated, trying to fix it, getting grease all over his hands. Mr. Henderson watched him from the window, annoyed at the disturbance. He was about to go yell at him to move along, but then Alex, seeing Mr. Henderson watching, did something unexpected. He walked right up to the door and knocked. Mr. Henderson opened it, scowling. "What do you want?" "Sir," Alex said, holding up his greasy hands, "I'm sorry to bother you, but I can't fix my chain. My dad's at work. Do you know how to fix bikes?" Mr. Henderson was stunned. No one had asked him for help in years. He looked at the boy. He looked at the bike. He grumbled. But he came outside. He spent 10 minutes showing Alex how to fix the chain. He told him about his own first bike. For the first time in a decade, Mr. Henderson was talking. He was connecting. When they finished, Alex beamed. "Thank you, Mr. Henderson." That small act cracked the wall. The next week, Mr. Henderson was outside, showing Alex how to change a tire. The week after, he was waving to Alex's mom. The grumpy old man was slowly becoming a neighbor again. Loneliness is often a fortress we build ourselves to keep the world out. But we forget that the same walls that keep out the pain also keep out the joy. Mr. Henderson's life was changed, not by some grand gesture, but by a simple, brave request for connection. The lesson is twofold. Have the courage to ask for help and have the grace to give it. Story 28, The Blind Gardener. Mr. Henderson had to be asked for help to find his connection. Our final story for this segment is about a woman who gave her gift to the world without ever being asked and without ever expecting anything in return. A young couple moved into a new neighborhood. Next door lived an elderly woman named Mrs. Gable. The couple was astonished by her garden. It was the most beautiful, vibrant, and perfectly kept garden they had ever seen. Roses, lilies, tulips, a riot of color and perfume. One morning, the wife saw Mrs. Gable in the garden, tending her roses. She went over to compliment her. "Mrs. Gable," she said, "your garden is just magnificent. You must get so much joy just from looking at it." Mrs. Gable smiled, turning her head toward the sound of the voice. "Oh, thank you, dear," she said, her voice like tissue paper. "But I've never seen my garden. I've been blind for 30 years. The wife was speechless. Then why?" she finally stammered. "Why do you do all this work?" Mrs. Gable smiled. "Well, I can't see them," she said, "but I can still smell them, and I do it because I knew it would bring joy to you." The original story is simple. The purpose of my planting these flowers is for everyone to enjoy. This is the purest form of generosity. To create beauty you will never see. To give a gift you cannot yourself enjoy, simply for the sake of giving. We so often do things with an expectation of return. Mrs. Gable's lesson is one of selfless love. The greatest gifts are those we give knowing we will receive nothing back but the simple joy of having given. We just heard the story of Mrs. Gable, the blind gardener who cultivated beauty for others she would never see. She was a person who, in a way, had nothing yet gave everything. But what happens when you have everything and you forget to give even a simple word of thanks? Story 29, The Billionaire and the Janitor. James Calloway was a billionaire. He had buildings, companies, and a schedule planned to the minute. He also had a constant dull headache, a stomach ulcer, and a permanent scowl. Every morning he entered his marble headquarters, and every morning he walked past Robert, the day shift janitor. Robert somehow was always happy. He whistled an out-of-tune melody, mopped the floor, and always smiled at Mr. Calloway. "Morning, Mr. C," Robert would say. Calloway never responded. He'd just nod or ignore him, already on his phone. One morning, the elevator doors opened. Calloway stepped in. At the last second, Robert pushed his cleaning cart in with him. The doors closed, and the elevator lurched to a stop. Calloway instantly pulled out his phone. "No service," he growled. He started banging on the door. Robert just smiled. "Oh, don't you worry, sir. They'll find us. This old elevator, she does this." Calloway was aghast. "We are stuck. My time is money," Robert chuckled. "Well, I'm on the clock too, sir." He reached into his cart. "Want a chocolate bar? Helps with the nerves." They were trapped for 20 minutes. Calloway, for the first time in his life, had no choice but to talk. He asked about Robert's family. Robert asked about Calloway's business, which he didn't really understand. When the doors finally opened, Calloway rushed out, but he stopped. He turned back. Robert was whistling again, pushing his cart. "Robert," Calloway said. "Yes, sir?" "Thank you for the chocolate," Robert beamed. "Any time, boss. See you tomorrow." The original story tells of a professor and a small beggar boy. The boy, having received a small kindness, ran back just to say, "Thank you, sir." And that simple gratitude from someone with nothing shook the professor to his core. James Calloway was the one with all the money, but Robert was the rich one. Calloway had forgotten the most basic currency of human connection: gratitude. He had forgotten the value of a simple thank you or a chocolate bar, freely given. Story 30, the Facebook argument. That connection, that basic gratitude, seems to be growing rarer. We have found new and powerful ways to build walls, even with the people we once loved. Tom and Brian had been best friends since high school. They were the best men at each other's weddings. They had watched football together every Sunday for 20 years. But that was before the election. Tom watched one news channel. Brian watched another. Slowly, their friendly jokes started to have an edge. It started on Facebook. Brian shared an article. Tom commented, "You can't seriously believe this, Brian." Brian replied, "Really, Tom? After everything your side has done?" The argument escalated. It moved from the article to policy, and then to morality. Words like idiot, brainwashed, and traitor were used. Finally, Tom typed the last words. "If this is what you believe, I don't even know who you are anymore. Good luck." He hit the unfriend button. The big game came that Sunday. They both sat in their living rooms watching it alone, silently checking their phones. They had both won the argument, and they had both lost their best friend. This is a parable for our times. We have allowed our digital identities, our party, our team, our bubble, to become more real than our flesh and blood relationships. We are willing to sacrifice 20 years of friendship for the fleeting, bitter satisfaction of winning an argument with someone we can't even see. The lesson is a frightening one. Be careful. The digital walls we are building are isolating us in the real world, and loneliness is too high a price to pay for being right. Part 4. Wisdom, Truth, and Integrity. We've talked about work, about the mind, and about connection. Now we turn to our final journey. Wisdom. How do we know what's true? How do we live a life of integrity? And how do we learn to tell the difference between knowledge and understanding? Our first story in this section begins, as it so often does, at a university. Story 31. The philosophy student Ethan was a freshman philosophy student. He had read 3 books and was now convinced he understood the universe. He was particularly self-assured in Dr. Alistair's Intro to Logic class. One day, Ethan made a bold declaration. "Morality is simply a social construct designed for control," he said, proud of his own brilliance. Dr. Alistair, an older man with patient eyes, nodded. He did not argue. He only asked, "An interesting thesis, Ethan. Why do you believe that?" "A Socratic method." Ethan gave a quote he had memorized. "Very good," said Dr. Alistair. "Why do you believe that quote is true?" Ethan, slightly flustered, tried to rephrase the idea. "I see," said Dr. Alistair. "Why is that rephrasing more valid than another?" Ethan started to stumble. "And why?" Dr. Alistair asked gently. "Do you feel so certain?" With just 4 simple whys, Dr. Alistair, like Socrates in the original story, had not defeated Ethan. He had simply dismantled him. He led Ethan from his arrogant certainty to the one singular place where real wisdom begins, the silence of realizing you know nothing at all. The original story tells of Socrates, who used questions to help them realize the contradiction in their own thinking. Ethan was confused. He thought wisdom was about having all the answers. Dr. Alistair showed him that true wisdom is about knowing how to ask the right questions and, most importantly, having the courage to question your own beliefs. Knowledge is knowing a tomato is a fruit. Wisdom is not putting it in a fruit salad. We've just seen how a student's ego, his mistaken belief that he knew everything, was his greatest weakness. But what happens when the world attacks someone who doesn't have that ego? What happens when a person of integrity is attacked by people who have none? Story 32. The Teflon CEO Ann Griffin was the CEO of a company known for its quiet integrity. She was not flashy. She didn't make headlines. She just did good work. One day, a rival wanting to poach her company launched a vicious anonymous smear campaign. The media, smelling blood, jumped in. Her team was frantic. "They're calling you a leaf in a dirty well," her PR chief said. "They are trying to sink you. You have to fight back. You have to sling mud." But Anne refused. She was the clean leaf, and she would not be pulled into the mud. Instead, every time a gush of water, an accusation was poured on her, she met it not with anger, but with transparency. They accused her of financial misdeeds. She calmly released the last 5 years of her company's internal audits. They accused her of being a cruel boss. She authorized her employees to speak anonymously to any journalist who wanted to. With every new attack meant to drown her, she simply added another layer of truth. And a funny thing happened. The water didn't sink the leaf, it lifted it. The more accusations they threw, the more truth she released. The higher and higher her reputation rose, until the water, the public support, was so high that she floated free of the well entirely. The original story teaches us this beautiful, powerful lesson. The slanderous, despicable words in the end will help the leaf escape. You cannot sink something that is clean. An attack on a person of integrity, when met with truth, does not destroy them. It washes them. It reveals their character, and it lifts them up, leaving the mud and the accusers at the bottom where they belong. Story 33. The Prince email. Ann Griffin's integrity made her immune to attack. But our next story is about a man who was vulnerable, not because he was bad, but because he was greedy. Kevin was a man in quiet financial desperation. One morning he received an email. It was from a Nigerian prince who claimed to be in political trouble. He had $20 million, he said, but he couldn't access it. He just needed a trusted American partner to send him $5,000 for banking fees. In return, he would share half the fortune. Kevin knew it was a scam. His brain screamed, "This is the oldest trick in the book." But then another voice whispered, a voice from his debt, from his fear. "But what if it's real? What if I'm the one lucky guy?" He looked at the fake email, at the poor grammar. He saw the tiger skin in the grass. And yet, his greed made him want to believe it was a real tiger. He sent the $5,000. The prince vanished. The money was gone. Kevin sat in his office, not angry at the thief, but angry at himself. He had not been fooled by the con man. He had been fooled by his own greed. The original story tells of a thief who tricks a shepherd with a fake tiger head. The shepherd, driven by fear, gives the thief a sheep every day. In our world, the motive is usually greed, not fear. But the lesson is the same. The con man doesn't have to be smart. He just has to wait for your own greed or your own desperation to do the work for him. If a deal seems too good to be true, it is. and it is a trap set for the worst part of yourself. Story 34. The Politician's Lie. Kevin was fooled by a lie he wanted to believe, but some lies don't need our greed. They just need our attention. There's an old saying, often attributed to Mark Twain. A lie can travel halfway around the world while the truth is putting on its boots. In our time, this is truer than ever. One day there was a complicated and nuanced event. The truth of the event was 10 pages long. It was complex. It involved statistics, context, and multiple points of view. It was, in a word, boring. The lie about the event was a single sentence. It was sensational, it was angry, it was easy to understand, and it was perfectly designed to make you hate someone. The lie was posted on Twitter. It got 1 million retweets by breakfast. It was on the news by lunch. It became the accepted truth. Meanwhile, the truth was still in a committee meeting, fact-checking its sources. It finally released its 10-page report 2 days later. It got 12 retweets and one comment that just said, TLDR, too long, didn't read. We live in an age that rewards speed, not accuracy. We crave simplicity, not nuance. The lie will always win the sprint. It's faster, it's sexier, and it doesn't care about the rules. But it has one weakness. It's not real. The truth wins the marathon. It may be slow. It may be boring. It may lose every battle on the way. But it is the only thing left standing when the noise fades and the tweets are deleted. Have the patience to wait for the truth, and have the wisdom to know that the simple, angry answer is almost always a lie. We've just seen how a simple, angry, and false answer can travel the world while the complex truth is still, well, we're still waiting for it. This is the danger of our modern world. We have become so impressed by complexity that we often miss the simple truth sitting right in front of us. This brings us to the story of a very strange job interview. Story 35. The Door Test. A legendary eccentric tech CEO needed to hire a new chief of problem solving. After months, she narrowed it down to 3 final candidates. The first was a brilliant engineer from Caltech, a true mathematician. The second was a Harvard MBA, a philosopher of market theory. The third was a priest in a way, a college dropout who had an almost religious faith in intuition. For the final test, she brought them to a single locked door. The door was fitted with a massive, complex digital interface flashing with streams of numbers and code. The problem is simple, the CEO said. First one through the door gets the job. The Caltech engineer immediately pulled out his laptop and began reverse engineering the code on the lock. The Harvard MBA stood back, whiteboarding the game theory of the test, the psychological profile of the CEO and the potential trick. The college dropout watched them both. She knew she couldn't outcode the engineer. She couldn't outthink the MBA. She felt completely outclassed. She looked at the flashing, terrifying lock. She looked at the two geniuses lost in their own complex worlds. And then she looked at the door handle. She shrugged. She walked up to the door, and she turned the handle. The door swung open. It had never been locked. The two geniuses were still busy solving a problem that didn't exist. The original story says the door was not locked. There was no puzzle to solve. We live in a world that makes us believe every problem is complex. We are so busy looking for the algorithm, the system, the hack, that we forget to check the handle. The lesson: Before you try to pick the lock, have the courage to just try the door. Story 36. The Rock. The woman who got the job knew her own limitations, but our next story is about knowing your worth. There was a young, discouraged programmer named Maya. She had built a small, clever piece of code, but she was frustrated. "No one sees the value in what I've made," she told her mentor. Her mentor, a wise, old venture capitalist, gave her a task. "I want you to find the value of that code," he said. "But do not sell it. Just ask." Maya went first to a local bakery, a small business. "I see what you have," the owner said. "This is a nice tool. It could help me with my inventory. I'll give you 100 for it." Maya was disappointed. Her mentor sent her to the next level. She got a meeting with a mid-level manager at a large insurance company. The manager was impressed. "This is a clever algorithm," he said. "It could optimize our data entry. Our budget for small tool acquisitions is $50,000. Maya was stunned. "Keep going," said her mentor. Finally, Maya got a 10-minute pitch with the chief technology officer of a major AI firm. She explained her code. The CTO stopped her. He stood up, walked to the whiteboard, and was silent for a full minute. "This," he said, turning to her, "this logic, if we apply this to our neural network's learning model, this could save us $100 million a year. Our opening offer is $20 million. The original story tells us, do you understand now? Your value is just like this stone. It depends on the eyes of the people at the market." Maya had the same rock in all 3 meetings. At the bakery, it was worth $100. At the insurance company, $50,000. At the AI firm, $20 million. The code never changed, only the market did. The lesson is this: your value is not fixed. It is a function of where you place yourself. If you feel undervalued, do not change who you are. Change your market. Story 37. The free potluck. Maya learned that in the right market, her work had incredible value, but value is created by effort, and some people forget this. It was the annual neighborhood block party, a classic American potluck. Everyone was asked to bring a dish. The Smiths, though busy, spent hours smoking a brisket. The Patels brought a huge pot of biryani that took all morning. The Joneses, not great cooks, brought 3 expensive cases of craft beer. Everyone contributed. Then one neighbor, Brad, showed up empty-handed. "Oh, shoot," he laughed. "I totally forgot. Hope you guys don't mind." He was the first in line at the buffet. He took the biggest helping of the brisket. He drank the expensive beer. He laughed, told stories, and was the first to leave, patting his stomach. "Great party, guys." No one said a word, but everyone saw. The next month, when the neighborhood organized a group cleanup day, no one called Brad. The month after, when the Patels hosted a small barbecue, Brad's invitation was lost. He hadn't been punished. He had just been quietly and completely removed from the circle of reciprocity. The original story tells of a king who asked for all the wisdom of the world to be condensed. After years, his scholars brought it to him in one single sentence: there is no free lunch. This is not just about money, it is about karma, it is about effort. Brad thought he'd gotten a free meal, but he hadn't. He paid for it with his reputation. The community table requires that you bring something. If you only ever take, you will eventually find yourself eating alone. We've just seen the consequences of only taking from the community table. Brad's neighbors saw his true character not in his words but in his actions. This disconnect between what we say we are and what we do is one of the most common human failings. Story 38. The Preacher and the Waitress. On Sunday morning, Pastor Davies delivered a powerful sermon on compassion. "We are here," he boomed, "to serve the meek, to be a light to those in darkness, to show grace to those who stumble." The congregation was moved. After the service, he went to a local diner for lunch. He was in a hurry. The diner was busy. His waitress, a young woman named Jess, was new and clearly overwhelmed. She accidentally spilled a bit of water on the table while refilling his glass. The pastor's face turned dark. "Are you incompetent?" he snapped, his voice low and cold. "I've been waiting 10 minutes for my check. Is this your first day, or are you just stupid?" The girl's eyes filled with tears. She stammered an apology. At a nearby table, one of the pastor's own congregation members sat watching. He had been so inspired by the sermon just an hour earlier. Now, he just watched as the pastor berated the young woman, a meek person if ever there was one. The pastor, having finally gotten his check, threw a few dollars on the table, no tip, and left feeling right. The young man in the original story wanted to be a clean leaf by running away to a temple. But the lesson is that integrity isn't about where you are, it's about what you are. The pastor's sermon was beautiful, but his character was revealed by how he treated the waitress. Your integrity is not what you proclaim in public. It's not your job title, your sermon, or your mission statement. Your true character is what you do when you think no one of importance is watching. Story 39. The athlete who doped the pastor lost his integrity for a moment of power. Our next story is about a man who lost his for a moment of glory. Ryan was a cyclist. He was good. He was very good. But he wasn't a champion. He trained his entire life, sacrificing everything. But at the highest level, there was always someone just a little faster, just a little stronger. So he made a choice. He started doping, small, undetectable amounts at first, then more, and it worked. He won. He won the big race. He won the yellow jersey. He stood on the podium, his national anthem playing, biting the gold medal, a hero to his nation. His rivals, the clean ones he had beaten, stood below, their dreams crushed. He became a legend. He wrote books. He started a cancer charity. He was an icon of perseverance. But he lived every single day in a private, cold sweat terror. He was a fraud. Years later, the truth came out. He was exposed. The medals were stripped. The charity was tarnished. The books were pulled. He lost his reputation. He lost his fortune. He lost everything. In a press interview long after his fall, a reporter asked him the real question. Was it worth it? Ryan was silent for a long time. The victory? He said. The victory was the best feeling in the world for one day. But the lie is a prison you live in forever. You're never free. You never, ever, ever get to just enjoy it. You're just waiting to get caught. The lesson is stark. A victory without integrity is not a victory at all. It is a loss you will be forced to live with for the rest of your life. Story 40. The fisherman and the diamonds. Ryan, the athlete, threw away his integrity, his honor, his life's work without realizing its value until it was too late. This is the final and perhaps most tragic human failing. We are given the most precious gift in the universe, and we treat it like a common stone. An old fisherman was on his boat in the pre-dawn darkness checking his nets. As he pulled one in, he felt a small, heavy bag snagged in it. He opened it. It was full of stones. He was bored, waiting for the sun to rise. So one by one, he took the stones and skipped them across the dark water, listening for the satisfying plink. Plink, plink, plink. He did this for many minutes, emptying the bag, his mind wandering. When the first rays of sunlight finally broke over the horizon, he was down to the very last stone. He held it up in the new light. His heart stopped. It wasn't a stone, it was a massive, uncut diamond. He looked at his hand. He looked at the empty bag. He looked at the water, where he had just thrown away an entire fortune one by one simply because he hadn't been able to see what they were. The original story is a painful one. The old man had accidentally thrown away a bag of precious stones. He had lost a fortune. But we are this fisherman, every single one of us. We are given a bag filled with the most precious diamonds in existence. They are called our days, our hours, our minutes. And because we are in the dark, distracted, bored, unaware, we throw them away. We kill time scrolling on our phones. We waste days in anger. We throw away hours on things that do not matter. We do this until the light finally comes. The light of a diagnosis, the light of a tragedy, the light of old age. And we look at the few diamonds we have left in our hand, and for the first time, we see them for what they truly are. The lesson is an urgent plea. Do not wait for the sun to rise to realize what you are holding. Do not throw away your time. It is all you have, and it is priceless. We've just seen the tragedy of the fisherman who threw away his diamonds, his time, not knowing their value until the light came. This leads to a final question about value. What is the purpose of precious things? Is it to preserve them, or is it to use them? Story 41, the Star Wars action figure. In 1980, two brothers, Tom and David, both received the same gift, a Boba Fett action figure. Tom was a collector. He knew this toy was special. He took his, left it in the original box, and put it on a high shelf. He never touched it. His goal was to preserve its value. David was a boy. He tore his box open. He flew Boba Fett around the yard. The toy's arm broke off. It got buried in the sandbox. It was scuffed, painted, and thoroughly loved. Its collector value was zero. 40 years later, Tom's figure, still in its box untouched, is worth a fortune. He has a valuable object. David's figure is a battered, one-armed piece of plastic he keeps in his desk drawer. It's worthless. But which brother got more value? Tom has an asset. David has the memory of 1,000 adventures in a galaxy far, far away. This is the paradox of value. We are a culture that loves mint condition. We are afraid to get scratches, to get messy, to use the things we're told are valuable, including our own lives. But a life lived in the box, preserved and untouched, is not a life. It's just a collectible. Your joy, your heart, your time. They are not meant to be preserved. They are meant to be spent. The dents, the scratches, the broken pieces, that is where the real value lies. That is the proof that you have truly lived. Story 42. The quarterback. A life fully lived is full of conflict, and in that conflict our instincts tell us to charge forward, but sometimes that is the worst possible move. In a vital football game, a young quarterback, a rookie, was on the final play. His team was losing. The noise was deafening. The ball was snapped. The quarterback grabbed it, looking for his receiver, but the pocket collapsed. A 300-pound defensive lineman, a wolf, was charging at him unblocked. The rookie's instinct was to run forward to try and gain the yard, to be the hero. But his training took over. Instead of charging into the wall, he did something that looked like giving up. He took 3 steps back. It looked like a retreat. It looked like a loss. But those 3 steps created something: time and space. From his new position, he saw a receiver he hadn't seen before, wide open 40 yards downfield. He planted his foot. He threw the ball. It was a perfect spiral, a touchdown. They won. The original story teaches us, retreating does not mean being weak. Retreating is to win. In our lives, when we are faced with conflict, an argument, a dead-end job, a moment of panic, our first instinct is to charge ahead, to win the fight. But the quarterback's lesson is one of profound wisdom. Sometimes the only way to move forward is to first step back. Stepping back gives you perspective. It gives you room to breathe. And it often reveals the winning play you were too close to see. Story 43. The man seeking the perfect wife. The quarterback found his perfect play. But some of us spend our lives searching for a different kind of perfection. There was a man who lived his entire life as a bachelor. He was charming, wealthy, and kind, but he never married. When he was 70 years old, a friend finally asked him the real question. You have traveled the entire world. You have met thousands of people. You have been searching your whole life for the perfect woman. Were you truly never able to find her? The old man's face grew sad. No, he said, you're wrong. I did find her. The friend was stunned. Then what happened? Why didn't you marry her? The old man sighed. I couldn't. She was busy looking for the perfect man. This is the beautiful, painful, and final trap of human connection, the search for perfection. We do this not just in love, but in everything. We search for the perfect job, the perfect moment, the perfect life. But perfection is an illusion. It is a sterile, inhuman idea. The truth is, life is messy, people are flawed. And love is not about finding a perfect person, it's about learning to see an imperfect person perfectly. Story 44, what do you see? This brings us to our final story, and it is a story about the lens through which we see everything else. There was a wise old monk and a bitter, angry nobleman. They decided to meditate together. After an hour of sitting in silence, the nobleman, eager to prove his superiority, opened his eyes. Master, the nobleman said, as I look at you, sitting there so peacefully, I see a holy man. I see a Buddha radiating light. The monk smiled gently. And what do you see, nobleman, when I look at you? The nobleman puffed up his chest. Tell me. The monk's smile did not fade. When I look at you, he said, I see a pile of cow dung. The nobleman was outraged. How dare you? You are no monk. You are an insult. He stormed out, telling everyone he had won the exchange, for he had been kind and the monk had been cruel. But his wife, a wise woman, shook her head. You fool, she said, you have lost. Don't you understand? The master's heart is so pure he can only see the Buddha in others. Your heart is so full of dung that it is all you are able to see, even in a holy man. The original story asks us to understand a simple, profound truth. What kind of heart do you have? That is what you see. We do not see the world as it is, we see the world as we are. The person who sees ugliness and corruption everywhere is telling you about their own heart. The person who finds beauty and kindness, even in a difficult world, is telling you about theirs. Your life is a mirror. What you see out there is a reflection of what is in here. The conclusion. We have traveled a long road tonight. We have seen the consultant and the barista. We have seen the eagle in the chicken coop. We have seen the fisherman throw away his diamond and the old man who saw only a pile of dung. 44 stories, all teaching one thing. Life is not about being the strongest oak, but the most flexible willow. It is not about having a perfect lawn, but a real one. It is knowing that your value, like a $20 bill, cannot be destroyed. It is having the courage to try the door even if it looks locked, and the wisdom to step back just to see the winning play. And above all, it is to know that your happiness is not something you find. It is something you give. Thank you for spending your valuable time with us. If these stories have touched your heart or simply brought a few moments of quiet to your day, we ask that you support our work by liking or by sharing this message. Your support is what allows us to continue our journey, spreading these values to the community. Be kind to yourself and remember, see the Buddha in others. Thank you for listening.